Hey testers, today I want to go over how you can disable third-party integrations and actions. That way they don't fire whenever your CheckView test flows are run. This will also ensure that test data is not being added into those other systems. The good news is there's two ways to do this I'm going to go over today. The first way using your form plugins with conditional logic and actions, and the second way using your no-code automation platform and using filters. So let's get started. I've already set up a sample site here. This is just using Ninja Forms. So if I scroll down here, you can see it's a pretty standard form. There's really nothing going on that is going to be an issue here. If I go to the backend though, I've got this Ninja Form set up. If I go to click it, when I go under emails and notifications, you'll notice there's a Zapier integration set up here, and it's firing off to Zapier every time a Ninja Form is submitted. If I go over to Zapier, there's a Ninja Form set up here, and once that form is submitted, it triggers Twilio, which sends out a text message to the administrator of this form. During a test, you don't necessarily want this to be triggered, so there's really two ways that you can go about doing this, and this is going to depend partly on your form plugin and partly on the platform you're using, if anything, for automation. And this doesn't just apply to what we're using today. This really would apply anytime you have a third-party integration hooking into your form plugin and you want to suppress that so that the test emails sent out from CheckView don't fire these third-party integrations. You can see that this form is already passing. So you can see here there's two tests running from form submissions that went in. So there's two ways that you can disable this depending on your setup. The recommended way is using conditional logic in your form plugin. In this case, I'm using Ninja Forms with their conditional logic add-on. Some plugins, of course, have this built in. Note that a lot of the free form plugins out there don't have conditional logic, so this may not work for you. But if you're using something like Gravity or WS Forms, they have conditional logic built in. We need to go ahead and install the conditional logic plugin if required, like in this case with Ninja Forms. Then you're gonna look for typically the action section of your form plugin, and you're gonna look for where you can fire conditional logic on the actions themselves. So in this case, if I click, I can see there is conditional logic, and this actually is really simple. We're just gonna say, don't process this when any of this is true, and we're gonna pick the email field, and if it contains the word checkview.io. That way, whenever an email is submitted, it's always going to have checkview.io in the test email. We're essentially just telling Ninja Forms, don't process it and send this if the email contains checkview.io. And that's going to prevent this from firing every single time. And this should work with pretty much any third-party integrations that are listed under the actions or the automation section of your form plugin. And I recommend going through and checking all your forms that you're testing and making sure this is set up. This will prevent you having to delete a lot of test data that might fire through those integrations. Now, if you do not have conditional logic available in your form plugin, whether it's because you don't have the paid version or it's not offered, the other way you can do it is really going to be more on the platform side of the third-party integration you're working with. But it could be Meg.com, it could be a CRM, as long as that system has a way that you can filter out based on the fields that are being posted to them, you can filter out this from firing. We're making the assumption that Ninja Forms is not going to work in this case. So if you already have set this up with Ninja Forms, you don't need to go any further. This is already going to work. But let's assume that this is not available to us and we have no way in the form plugin to disable this from being sent to the third-party integration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to edit that zap and I'm going to add a new step. And this is going to depend on your platform. I would look for something like filtering or conditional logic. Somehow you can filter out new submissions that come in from Ninja Forms into the platform in order to ensure that any that contain the email field with checkview.io do not get processed. So I'm going to go ahead and pick filter. In this case, you're going to say choose field. We're going to pick email, and then we're going to do very similar to what we did before. We're going to say the text does not contain, and we're going to type in checkview.io. And this is going to ensure that it's not going to fire if the email does contain checkview.io. You can see in our last test, it wouldn't have processed this because this is actually a test email from CheckView. And there's that checkview.io. So that's doing exactly what we want it to do. That's going to prevent this from firing. and we can go ahead and publish that. And like I said, this may really depend on your platform on how it handles filtering and that sorts, but I do recommend reviewing your platform and seeing if there's a filter type function, and then you can say contains or does not contain, depending how it processes it, the email with checkview.io in it. I hope today's video showed you how you can easily disable third-party integrations using your form plugin's conditional logic or your third-party platform's filtering methods. We are cooking up some neat ways to suppress some of this third-party logic, but in the meantime, if you get stuck, definitely reach out to our support. Thanks so much for watching, and catch you in the next video.